Hi guys, it's Kirsty. So today's video is mostly focused around relationship OCD and most specifically around when you're suffering from relationship OCD and you're having anxiety on the run up to a wedding. However, it is applicable for other events as well. So, whatever it is that you're anxious on the run up to because you're suffering from relationship OCD, or in fact, any other theme or obsession, it's applicable there as well. But before I get into it, I would like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So the reason why I wanted to do this video is because this is something that I suffered from massively, and I do believe it's something that kept me stuck for longer, was the kind of desperately wanting to rid myself of my ROCD before me and my partner got engaged. And the reason why I so desperately wanted to rid myself of it was because I wanted to know for definite at the point in which we got engaged that it was definitely the right thing to do. So essentially I wanted to have certainty. So I misguidedly thought that if I could be sort of cured of my ROCD, then I would have certainty at that point, which of course is very misguided because nobody has certainty with or without OCD or anxiety about anything. And that includes, any decision that they make around, their romantic decisions or, big things that they do in life. There will never be any certainty about what the outcome might be. So my first tip there is to get the idea out of your head straight away that you will have certainty when your OCD has, lifted, because you won't have certainty because it doesn't exist with this. So, if couples who say, oh, when they don't know, say every person goes into a marriage with faith and hope that it will work out. Not all relationships or marriages do work out. So, if people had, if people say things like, oh, when it's a romantic idea, and they have an idea that this is the kind of person, I know that I would like to spend my life with somebody. It doesn't mean that I 100% would spend my life with somebody. So when somebody says, when they know that they'd like that to be the case, but they don't know that will be the case. And none of us know that that will be the case because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what our partner might be thinking, feeling, or how we'll be thinking and feeling in a year. But if it's something that we want to do, then we should progress and do that without the need for certainty. So that is my first tip in terms of if you're suffering from anxiety on the run up to kind of a big life event, particularly a wedding in this case, as I'm talking about most specifically, don't be looking for certainty when it comes to that event. Don't be trying to rid yourself of your OCD symptoms so that you'll have that certainty or you'll have that answer by then. Don't be waiting to have an answer before you make commitments, is what I am saying here. I say do the things that you want to do when you want to do it, and don't wait for your OCD symptoms to be gone before you do it. Be prepared to be a little bit uncomfortable, perhaps. So kind of taking on that idea of being uncomfortable and not waiting for our OCD to lift is the next point I wanted to make. And that is that we have certain expectations about how we should feel in certain moments in our lives. And that was something that contributed to keeping me stuck as well, was in addition to kind of wanting to get to a point of having certainty by that moment, I wanted that because I wanted to feel the way, I felt like I was supposed to feel. I wanted to feel doubt-free. I wanted to feel ecstatic, excited, and all of those things. You see lots of and once again, this is more specific to the idea of getting married and ROCD. You see on these films, people being proposed to and being, oh, you know, fairy princess moment. And, you know, your friends might talk about it like that. You know, they got butterflies when their partner proposed to them on the beach, or, you know, and all these love songs. So you kind of get an idea of how you think you know, you should feel. It should feel like this at this moment. Being engaged should feel a certain way. The wedding day should feel a certain way. And because we're holding these strong demands that it should feel a certain way, we will be distressing ourselves if we suspect that it might not feel a certain way. So, for example, if we're doing testing, you know, checking compulsions internally, like testing ourselves for how we might feel if our partner did propose, or trying to imagine your wedding day, or playing, you know, romantic music and trying to imagine your wedding day and how you might feel and things like that. If you then come up short of how you think you should feel on those days, then it's going to give you a lot of anxiety. So something I would recommend working on here is not needing to feel a certain way if you do get engaged, or on the run up to your wedding, or on your wedding day. And that is applicable for other things as well. You know, how you should feel when you find out that you're pregnant, or how you should feel when you I don't know, when you go on a first date with somebody, or when you graduate, or how you should feel when you're seeing your best mate after, you know, a year apart, something like that. Stop demanding to feel a certain way, because the more we do that, especially if we're checking ourselves internally to make sure that we are feeling the way that we think we should feel, the more we're kind of putting up barriers to ourselves feeling that way. You know, we might end up feeling more numb than anything else, or uncomfortable. So it's this idea that you should feel a certain way on certain events in your life, you know, particularly an engagement and the run up to your wedding day. Making these demands is incredibly counterproductive for anyone, let alone somebody who suffers from OCD. Because as I said, if we're making these rules, these irrational rules, you know, these beliefs that it should be a certain way, you should feel a certain way, otherwise it's awful, then we're going to make ourselves feel incredibly anxious or low if we come up even slightly short of that perfect, you know, expectation of feeling. And it's good to remember that, you know, you should feel a certain way, you should be sure, and all of that. That's something that society has made up over time. You know, as with, you know, a lot of things we might talk about on this channel, you know, getting ingrained in us as we grow up, because that's kind of, you know, a held belief across society. It doesn't necessarily make it true. People say things and actually it's quite meaningless, like what I said about when you know, you know. I'm sorry, what? Somebody could say when you know, but then be divorced in 5 years' time. And so therefore they didn't just know. They knew they wanted to do it at the time. And you know, therefore it was good to do it at the time. But they didn't know, did they? Let's be realistic here. So another thing that why it kind of also kept me stuck was, again, because I wanted my OCD to shift, because I wanted the planning of a wedding to be this, again, delightful, stress-free you know, period in my life. I'd seen some people be quite stressed about planning a wedding. I'd seen some people be, you know, just love every second of it. And because of the anxiety that I'd suffered, I had on occasions found myself feeling a bit overwhelmed from time to time when I felt like I had a lot on my plate. And that used to make me feel like I couldn't take on things, you know, sort of responsibilities, or like plan things. And a big example of this was the idea of planning a wedding. I simply didn't think I would be capable of it while I was still kind of struggling from anxiety. So once again, this came down to wanting to feel a certain way, I suppose. It kind of falls under that bracket again, you know, wanting it to be serene and perfect. And it's seeing truly that this is simply not realistic, that actually, if you were to Google it, not all brides love every aspect of wedding planning, and that is completely fine. Planning things is not for everybody. Wedding planning sometimes can involve, you know, having, you know, having to coordinate a lot of things, a lot of plate spinning, bearing in mind you're doing that with your everyday life as well. So it's hardly a surprise if one did find themselves feeling anxious about that or feeling grumpy about it. And any of you are an OCD sufferer, suffering specifically from a relationship OCD, your OCD could jump over that, you know, and say, oh, but maybe you don't want to get married. Maybe it's not the right decision because you're not blissfully happy in every moment of this. You're not smiling all the time. You're grumpy today. Maybe you don't want to get married. Maybe it's not the right thing for you, and all of that stuff. When in fact, you're human, you're allowed to be grumpy sometimes. Wedding is, you know, if you choose to have a certain type of wedding, it can be, you know, like I said, a lot of plate spinning, a little bit stressful. You'll have every right to be grumpy, you know, so best not to try to avoid letting OCD drag you into analysing those kind of feelings as well if you are planning a wedding. And another thing that I would like to add is that some of us might find a need to have everything perfect on wedding day. Again, kind of to eliminate any chance of stress or anything that might ruin your day. But that is very much trying to control the external environment. Whereas it's useful if you look at kind of the irrationality behind this. I don't need to feel a certain way, therefore I don't need things to be completely perfect externally around me. So an auntie so-and-so over there doesn't need to have her favourite blend of tea because I can stand it if one person at my wedding isn't having the best time. So it's useful to kind of look at what other irrational beliefs you might be holding if you're anxious about the, you know, the planning of the event itself and certain details around it. You know, is it the need for approval from other people? Is it, like I said, the need to have everything perfect externally around you in order to minimise any chance of being triggered in any possible way on your wedding day? I think it's useful to look back, and this is something that really helped me. I'd been to a number of weddings of other people that I had really enjoyed, but OCD had still very much been there in the background for me. But there had been, you know, I'd still enjoyed the food, I'd still enjoyed the dancing, enjoyed a nice glass of wine, and I'd still found it an emotional and beautiful thing to be present for. And so if that's the case, then there's no reason why it can't be like that on your day when it's your wedding, or whatever big event it might be that you're, you know, that you're planning. And I would very much like to say that, and this isn't the case for everyone, but because getting married was important to me, and I wanted to marry my partner, who I am marrying now. This did keep me stuck, these kind of fears of not feeling a certain way and all of that, and thinking that I couldn't do it until my OCD was fixed. This did keep me stuck because what you're doing there is you're holding back. You're saying, I'm not going to do the things that I want to do. I'm not going to live my life on my terms until my OCD is better. You're putting, in a way, you're putting timelines on it in a way, and therefore you're giving it a lot of power. And for me, once I started to truly not need to feel a certain way, and I really disputed lots of aspects of it, my OCD, my ROCD lifted a lot, actually, to the extent that by the time I got engaged, it wasn't the ROC wasn't kind of present on the day that it wasn't there the day that I got engaged. And that wouldn't necessarily be the case for everyone, because what I would like to add here is that I had been doing recovery work for quite, you know, a good amount of time at this point. And I'd also done some big things in that time. I'd bought a house with my partner, we bought a puppy, I'd left my job, I started a new career, you know, we were decorating the house. So I was actually I'd taken several big life steps, which were all exposures in various ways by this point anyway. But it really, really helped me, you know, thoroughly disputing and working on not needing to feel a certain way, doing it because I want to do it. You know, it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be like as blissful as some brides might make it out to be. And I want to stress that as well, how they make it out to be, because you must remember, what we see on Instagram that people show, they're showing what they want to show, you know, so we don't know the full picture of anything. It's a photoshopped version of their life anyway. So I want to just add that, just bear that in mind. And obviously, you know, we don't want to be using that as reassurance, but we know this. We know that people can use social media to make everything look all sparkly and pretty and fluffy and, you know, like perfect, when in fact that's simply not life. So to summarize, really, what I want to say here is, for any event, whether it's wedding or, you know, any sort of big thing that maybe OCD is holding you back from, or it's kind of maybe taking the shine off of, have a look at, you know, are you holding irrational beliefs about how you should feel, and how awful do you think it is that you don't always feel a certain way at all times? You know, look at the rules that you're setting for yourself and ask yourself, is this flexible? Is this scientific? You know, is there any proof that I must feel a certain way, or I should feel a certain way? And is it really as awful as you think it is? You know, really dig deep. And there are plenty of videos on this channel that talk about the various fears involved in ROCD. There's an ROCD playlist. I recommend having a look at that, because you might need to do some disputing of specific fears associated with ROCD. But also there are videos about, you know, unconditional life and self-acceptance as well, which can help you identify some irrational beliefs. And there's another video about how to dispute your irrational beliefs. So look at where you're maybe saying things to yourself like, it should be this way, it must feel this way, it would be awful if the day wasn't like this, or if I was feeling this way on the day, that's awful. Look at this and then really start to pick it apart and look at, you know, is this really helpful way for me to, these helpful beliefs, or would it serve me better to start trying to change these beliefs into something a bit more flexible, i.e. I would prefer to feel like this on this day or this life event, but I don't need that to be the case. It's a strong preference, and I will work very hard on my OCD recovery to try and help to be as rational as possible so I can enjoy my day as much as possible. But I don't need to be fully recovered by that point. I don't need to be fully rational by that point. So, you know, it even comes down to, and we say this in several videos, part of, you know, unconditional acceptance is sometimes accepting when it's taking you longer than you would want it to accept, accepting not being able to accept from time to time. So I hope this video has been helpful to you if you're, you know, if you've got a big event coming up, and specifically if you have a wedding coming up, or if you would like to get married but you're terrified of getting engaged because of what, you know, OCD fears, like particularly, you know, ROCD, but like I said, there can be any number of themes that might prevent you from wanting to get engaged or move forward with certain things like getting married or various other life events. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and do take care. Bye bye.